In this video, I will show you how to create this responsive workflow section using HTML and CSS. I will explain every line of code and show you how it's done. So let's get into it. So to start the project, I will create everything from scratch. Here I have my empty folder. I will create a index.html file and a style.css. Inside the HTML, using one exclamation mark, I will create this boilerplate. Let's change the title, link the style sheet, and open this file on the browser using live server. And inside the CSS file, I will select everything and reset the margin and padding, and set the box sizing to border box, and set a font family. You can use whatever font you like. So let's go back into the HTML file. So before we start, let's take a look at the finished version and break it down. So first, we are going to create a container that is going to contain all of these elements. And as you can see, we actually have two elements inside the container, this big H1 and those cards. We are going to create one more container for these cards. And these are basically 5 cards that are side by side. And we have this line behind them. So when you break it down like this, it becomes really simple. A big container, and inside one more container, and then 5 cards side by side. So let's start. First, let's create the big container, and at the top I will have this H1 with the text, our workflow, and right under it we are going to create another container. Let's call this one content box, and inside this one we will have 5 cards. Let's call it box. So this first one is going to have a little title at the top, and right under it we will have a emoji, and the emoji has a background, so I will create another element for that. Let's call it dot, and inside we will have the circle. To be able to select a emoji inside VS Code, if you're using Windows, just press the Windows button and the period at the same time, and I will click on this emoji, and right under this div I will create a paragraph for some information. And that is it with this box. All we need to do is to copy and paste this 4 more times. And this is it with the HTML. Now we can style it. So first I will select the body and change the background color to this dark blue color, and set the text color to white. Then I will select the container and set the minimum height to 100 VH, so this container is going to cover the whole viewport. And then I will make it a flex container and change the flex direction. And this is basically going to first bring these 2 elements side by side, which is this H1 and the content box. And when you change the flex direction, they will basically stack on top of each other. So right now we have the H1 at the top and the boxes at the bottom. Let's also center them using align item center and justify content center. And I will put some gap between the title and the cards. So let's say 5 EM. Let's select the title, increase the font size, and I will set its position to relative, because I will use a pseudo element to create that underline effect. So H1, and I will use after. The content is going to be empty, because this is just going to be an underline. And when I say position absolute, so you can think of this as a whole new child element of this parent element. And when you say position absolute, it basically positions relative to this H1. I will make the background color this orange color, set the height to 6 pixels and the width to 100%. And to align these elements to the H1, I will set the right to 0. And to bring it down a little bit, I will say top 100%. And let's also give it a little border radius as well. And that is it with the underline effects. Next, I will select the content box, which is the box that has the cards inside. I will set its position to relative as well, because we are basically going to do the same thing that we did with the H1. To create that underline effect, we used a pseudo element, which is the after. And I will do the same thing with this one to create that line behind the cards. I will make this one a flex container as well to bring the cards side by side and put some gap between them using 2em. And again, using after, I will create this pseudo element. The content is going to be empty. Position is going to be absolute, so it is going to be positioned to its parent element. I will bring it down by 120 pixels, set the width to 100% and height to 5 pixels. And the background color is going to be the same color, so let's copy and paste it. The same border radius. And I want this line to be at the back of these cards, so I will set the Z index to -1, and that is it. Next, let's select these cards, make them flex containers, change the flex direction to column again to bring the elements inside on top of each other, and align all the other elements on the center as well. Let's also give it a padding of 3em. To put some gap between the elements inside, 1em. And the maximum width of these cards are going to be 300 pixels. And we will also create some hover effects in a second, so let's give it a transition to make it more smooth. Also, let's select the H3 and the paragraph and lower the opacity for the hover effect again, the transition as well. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can see it better. So I will select this circle, give it a little padding, and set the background color to white, and make it a circle using border radius, and transition for the hover effects. So let's create the hover effects. So when you hover over the box, which is basically this entire card, the circle is going to have a green background, and we will just make it a little bit bigger using transform scale. And also I will bring the opacity of all the elements inside that card to 1, because we lowered it down to 0.7. And also I will make this little title move to the top just a little bit. And when you use translate UI and you want something to move to the top, you need to use minus, so -20 pixels. And I also want the paragraph to go down, so I will use translate UI again, but this time it is going to be just 20 pixels. And there you go. When you hover over the card, this H3 moves to the top and the paragraph moves to the bottom. The circle gets bigger, the opacity goes up, the line at the back is in the right place. The only thing left is to make this responsive. So to create the responsiveness, I will create one breakpoint, 1200 pixels. I will select the container and give it a margin of 5em to 2em. So 5em of margin at the top and the bottom, and 2 on the sides. And also we need to delete the line behind the cards, so let's set it to display none. And also I will change the flex direction of the content box, which is row by default. I will set it to flex direction column to bring the cards on top of each other, and I will decrease the gap between them to 1. And also let's increase the maximum width of the cards to 600 pixels. And let's see how it's looking. There you go. And also we need to set the H1 to text wrap no wrap because it has 2 words inside and we don't want it to wrap inside. Increase the font size of this H3 to 2em. And finally the paragraph, increase it as well. Let's make it 1.2. And that is it. Let's take a final look. The hover effects work fine, everything is in the right place, and the responsiveness is looking well. And this is how we can create this workflow section using HTML and CSS. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for your time, and I will see you next time.